on Invoking Polyhymnia and Calliope. Sacred, epic poetry does not express itself only through the spoken or the written word, but also through image and pictorial symbolism. Sometimes creative inspiration becomes a task and a burden rather than an uninhibited flow of expression. Why? Mostly because of our own minds cling to the plethora of inundations programmed into us by the current strictures of our civilization. We sit in front of a blank page with what we think is a blank mind, unable to proceed, even in making a single mark upon that white silence. But is it a truly blank mind, devoid of any creative impulse? You sit in front of an empty space. Close your eyes and start your journey inward and begin to listen. Listen to the voices which begin to emerge from that endless sea of your singular consciousness. Can you hear them? They start first as a whisper, but then gain momentum and volume. They start small, asking you simply, what is the purpose of this anyway? There's nothing to be gained from this, is there? This is not a priority, it's just a hobby. You have more important things to do. No one's gonna like this. Is anyone gonna like this? I can't compete with people whose work is better than mine. What if those who see this make fun of it? If I can't make money off of this, then why should I even try? Artists can't make a living from their work. If an artist can't make a living, then the art must be crap. Saleability defines the value of a work of art, doesn't it? Are these really your own thoughts, or are they just the result of years of subtle and not so subtle undermining influences? Believe me, these voices are there. They are a product of our time, of our global culture, which has trained us to value a thing only by its ability to be exchanged for a good sum. Does it sell fast? Then obviously it's valuable. Is it trending and gaining momentum, bringing in a flood of potential buyers and purchases? Then this proves that it's good and it has value, doesn't it? But I ask you, is this really the case? Or is it just a group of narratives agreed upon by some unseen cloister? Over time, I have come to realize that so much we embrace is actually simply an implant. It is a collection of other people's ideas and perspectives that we were subjected to, and they were so subtly injected into us, and we came to believe them as our own, and even to elevate them in the hallowed fields of our own psyche. Things that have value only have value if they equate to monetary value, right? So now close your eyes and walk down the sunny, dusty roads of your memory, far into the past. Can you remember? Do you remember? The filtered sunlight dancing under the tree canopy? The verdant, crisp green grass swaying in the breeze. You sat there on a blanket with a handful of crayons, and the cat purred around your feet and then flopped lazily upon the paper you had strewn all over the blanket before you. You had a box of treasure beside you that you opened slowly and with bated breath. Slowly you took the colors out one by one, examining them with the utmost of care. You took a fistful and you held them to your nose, inhaling deeply the vigorous sweet odors of wax and pigment wafted into your memory. And then you grabbed the papers and you started to scribble, just loving the act of the moment. You had no thought in your head of right or wrong, because you were free. You had no thought of ugly or beautiful, because these things were of no interest to you. What you were was simply existing in the moment. The soft breeze caressed your cheek. The birds sang gleefully all around you. An occasional bee buzzed near, or even a butterfly. The tiny ants crawled on your blanket, joining you in this tiny festival of expression. You were at peace. You had no standard to appeal to for approval. You were just being free. Whatever you felt, you put on the paper. Rainbows, flowers, green grass. You didn't care if they were accurate. You had no concept of accurate. The muses sat by your side. You did not summon them or work hard to gain inspiration from them. Instead, they were just there, a natural part of your inner world. You had not learned yet how to erect the wall between you and them. But time passed and you grew and changed, and what had once been as close to you as your very breath was now more and more distant from you. It's like a gate into a garden you once frequented, which has now become rusted shut due to lack of use. Here and there you found ways back into that garden to visit it and enjoy what it had to offer, but with time, those passages became overgrown and forgotten, and it became more and more difficult and perilous to access. With this, the muses became more and more subtle, and then invisible. So invisible that you thought that they had left. But take heart, they never really leave. You simply become blind to them. They are still there. You just need to relearn to see them. You need to remember the path and work hard to retrace it. There is no easy way back to an overgrown and neglected path. But that does not mean it is impossible to return. It just takes a bit of consistent effort. So there are a few goals that need to be worked through here. Number 1, learning to discern your own aesthetic from that which was implanted in you. Number 2, realizing that creativity is beyond being weighed and valued by monetary concerns. Number 3, realizing that making art is important because it is important to satisfying your soul, and it is valuable because it is valuable to the peace of your soul. Number 4, realize that you do not have to live up to anyone's standards but your own. Number 5, remembering the thrill of creativity during your childhood. Number 6, remembering that you had no interest in self-policing your creative actions then. Number 7, knowing the muse has not left you, but you have simply lost consciousness of its existence. Number 8, finding ways to regain entrance into the garden you forgot existed. So, how can this be achieved? Well, one of the first ways is to learn methods of relaxation before beginning any venture. Music, of course, is always helpful, as is a pleasant environment. Sometimes it's a very good idea to find a spot in nature to simply ruminate for a while. Hopefully, you've brought along your sketchbook, some sort of a sketchbook, as well as artistic implements. Sit comfortably with the open book upon your lap. If you are sitting in nature, near a tree, try putting your back up against it. If near a large stone, do the same. Clear your mind by just taking in your surroundings. Stare into interesting spots, just allowing your imagination to run free. Let your consciousness flow effortlessly. Now, put your pencil to the paper, just letting the tip sit upon the blank sheet. Stare into the distance. Let your mind settle down and relax. By this time, you may have noticed something. Mental images beginning to manifest, stirred on by your surroundings. Don't fight these, but also don't work to define them either. Instead, begin to allow your pencil to slide across the surface of your paper. If your mind happens to snag on a vision or a symbol, just without effort, loosely draw it. It may start as a line that becomes fat and then thin. It might be a swirl or a spiral. Just go with it. Don't worry about composition or accurate representation. Don't worry about proportion or scale, or even if the unfolding scene makes any sense to you. Don't worry if it is abstract, mingling with realistic imagery. Just let it go. Fill the entire page. Add color if the desire strikes you. Keep the pencil moving until until you feel finished. And then simply stop. Now, look at what you've completed. Notice the parts that stand out more than all the others. Notice the parts that you appreciate more than others. Notice the weak points and then notice the strong points. And now, put the drawing away for a day or two. When you come back to revisit this drawing, think about all the things that you had noticed about it days earlier. Now, think about ways that you can turn this flow of consciousness sketch into a serious piece of work. Looking at the sketch, take the general theme of it into the new work. In this case, I sketched birds and flowers by what seemed to be water. I then retranslated it into a more serious piece. I decided that it was a heron in a lake near a forest, accompanied by small birds, a frog, some insects, and many flowers. I decided to retain the overall color scheme, as well as the centralized placement of the subject matter. I made only minor adjustments to composition to give it a little more flow and harmony. I also added a few elements to strengthen balance. Again, when starting this new piece, I didn't want to burden myself with overthinking of formal elements or principles of design. Sometimes dwelling on those topics are best left for deep and intensive exercise sessions. It is beneficial to understand that constantly challenging yourself with many good exercises on the technical aspects of art making will soon pay off, and that those things will become instinctual and second nature, and obsessing over them will become less and less necessary as time goes on. Now, getting back to this new composition. Of course, I began by lightly penciling it in, and then decided that I would make the base a layer of watercolor. Doing this is helpful for anything you may decide to put on top, and can unify the composition even before you start laying down the next layer. The paper I used was not watercolor, but more of a Bristol board surface. I like that surface because it's very smooth and takes moist pigment into itself readily. I like the looseness of the pigment upon the surface, but I decided to add colored pencil as well for some extra definition. I had no intention of pushing this piece into a realistic one. Sometimes it's really not that necessary. Sometimes it's just nice to allow a thing to just be what it is. If you listen, the art will tell you what it wants to be. If you allow the thing to be itself, it can come alive before your very eyes. when you learn to let go, when you learn to allow the art itself to be a co-creator with you, when you awaken to the voices of those inner muses who invigorate and guide you, and you learn to trust what you intuitively know, then you are on your way home, a place where you can be free to make what you like for the sake of simply giving life to art, because it pleases you. It is a hard road to hoe, making something just to express without expecting any extrinsic reward. But when you can get it to this place, you open up an entirely new realm of possibility of art, truly for the sake of art. Art for the sake of expressing inner beauty. Art for the sake of revealing inner truth. Art for the sake of finding harmony within balance.